Hello, how's it going? Hmm, love tea. Um, so today I wanted to talk about authenticity. Um, it's a concept that's been going around, obviously, probably since the beginning of time. But I think lately, probably in the last 20 years, maybe a little bit less, maybe I'd say 2005, 2010, somewhere around there. Since then, um, that it seems to be very important, very upfront. I think it also has to do with the mainstreaming of hipsters, but maybe we'll explore that as we go on. But, so I wanted to talk about it because it does seem like it's very important to a lot of people. Yet I think there are either problems with definitions or there are pitfalls of being sort of obsessed with the idea of being authentic. So I'll just give you the definition. I always like to get, when we're talking about a term or a concept, I like to get the definition out so you understand straight away what I'm talking about. So I'm going by what Wikipedia says. Not always the best place to start, but it seemed okay. It seemed to sum up what I wanted to talk about. And basically, I'm reading it here. The degree to which a person's actions are congruent with his or her values and desires despite external pressures uh, to social conformity. Now, this seems to me, this is a personal characteristic. Basically, uh, you're true to yourself. This could be, if you think about it, maybe really evil people are authentic. And so authenticity is not necessarily something that you should be obsessive about. Um, it's good to be true to yourself. That way you can, it's easier to navigate in the direction you want to go in without having people influence you too much. So I think that being authentic is a really good secondary characteristic that you can do A, B, and C and D. Uh, no matter what it is, even if it's something I don't like, um, if it's a style, if you do a certain style of art, I don't like it, but you're authentic in the sense of that's the style that you like, and you're not bowing to commercial pressure or social pressure. You're just doing what you do, and let the naysayers say nay. Um, and so it really gives you the impression that the truly authentic person says whatever comes from the heart, and it doesn't come out of an ulterior motive. You're not looking for pats on the back. You're not looking for extra money if you just change a couple things here and there. Totally negate the authenticity of your art, which I think is generally a good thing. Um, uh, but But I mean, it basically says that whatever you're doing or whatever you say or whatever you believe is a genuine belief or it's a genuine habit, and it's not just for show. There's part of the Sermon on the Mount is basically saying do things. So obviously there's roots in the religion and based on this that Jesus said be good, be true to yourself in the sense of don't pray in public because it's more about the performance of what you're doing because you're going to get positive action or positive consequences for this. Or don't fast in public because don't give alms in public because you're really doing it for the secondary benefit of having done the thing in public rather than it being a genuine belief or a genuine action. So there are religious contexts uh, for authenticity. Now you don't have to be religious to do this. It's just that it seems like I think so many sources tend to uh, back up what I'm saying. So I do have a degree in history, and they basically it's like, well, prove it, prove it, find any evidence. What is the evidence for what you have to say? So, um, and when you're talking about authenticity in art, so basically one of the things about art or music or anything that's artistic, whether it's musical? Is it plastic arts? Like with painting or sculpting or something. It's often about emotion and expression. And be phony in that sort of thing is basically to be cynical. Perhaps you're using art as a means to an end rather than a pure avenue for expression. So you might be looking for attention, fame, money, credibility, something like that, rather than you're really just I want to get what I'm feeling out on on some canvas or out in music. And when you do it for secondary things, secondary um, reasons, you might be called a sellout. Um, and that kind of hurts to an artist because it's basically you're using it as a tool rather than as a channel for expression. So I kind of wanted to focus on the problems that are associated with this authenticity. While like I said, it's a good secondary characteristic. It's not necessary. It's a good personal characteristic, but it shouldn't be the primary focus on everything. The primary focus, if you want to do good art, is to do the good art, but say, this is real. This is really coming from my heart. Um, it should be secondary to the art rather than I want to do something really authentic, but I don't know what to do. Well, then, anything that you do, as long as you have, you're true to yourself, it's going to be authentic. So long as you don't get influenced. I think a lot of artists or musicians start off very genuine. They're very genuine in their approach, and then money, either they make compromises that they're either kind of bullied into or they don't see a problem with, and then suddenly, years later, they end up looking like garbage because they sold out or something like that. But um, one of the things, well, the problems, I'll focus on the problems, is that you can't really have it both ways. You can't be you. One of the things is that there's a sort of social pressure to be authentic, which pushes people as hard as it can in a certain direction, which means uh, authentic, be authentic. So the moment that you even show a crack in that wall of authenticity, you are essentially opening yourself up to criticism, whether you deserve it or not. And well, I'll give you. So basically, you're either pushing it. You're either a dyed-in-the-wool, authentic person, very hardcore, or you're a phony. They're the two extremes where you're either authentic or you're just a hack. Um, it doesn't really allow for people to have sort of a passive or sort of maybe not hardcore interest in something without totally ignoring it. And it really just kind of pushes people to be one of those two extremes, and I don't think that's very healthy. Because in order for somebody to dip their toe in the water, they have to be a passive supporter or passively interested in a subject or a topic. So this requires, but the thing is, like, if you're pushed into the hardcore category, so, okay, I'm going to commit to being hardcore, it requires you to be obsessive about something in order to maintain that veneer of authenticity, whether it's true or not. You basically have to start acting as if you're hardcore. And you might become hardcore. You might become really balls to the wall into whatever you're doing. The problem is that, there are other things in life besides art. Even the biggest artist in the world likes to do other things. So you're sort of pushed in that direction of, really, truly as hardcore as you can possibly be, lest you be considered a sellout or a poser, which is like the worst thing you could be called if you're really into something. Another problem. Um, it's like fuel to the fire. Is this idea of cultural appropriation? Now you've probably seen a lot of it out there. Um, it's part of these culture wars that I don't really like participating in, just because any kind of war is usually bad because it implies that we have such differences we have to come to blows, either if it's actual physical violence or if it's just just exchanging insults over the internet. It's still not a healthy attitude to take towards other people. But this idea of cultural appropriation is almost as if you're stealing someone else's culture, which I consider to be just nonsense, because everything is based on something else that came before it. And let's say, for example, like if you take a lot of art in the 1600s, you had, maybe even just before that, you had an Italian style called Rococo, which is and then later it became Baroque, and these are very flourished. Everything's got a little flower on it. It's very just it's exuding just fanciness. And then somewhere along the line, this idea of maybe in the 1700s, this idea of a fad came around of really being into Turkish stuff. Now, this is an area where like the dust had settled when the Turks had taken over the eastern part of Europe, and people came to terms with it. Obviously, then after several generations, most of Western Europe did not see the Turks as a giant threat because, well, they basically settled down. Even the most rabid, uh, virulent empires like the Mongols eventually settled down. They stopped being these conquering warriors and settled down and developed. The first thing they do when they settle down is they develop culture. And then, so the thing is that, like, if you see this in, there's a play by Moliere called the Bourgeois Gentilhomme, the bourgeois gentleman, where this guy basically comes into a lot of money, but he's a bit of a, you would call him nouveau riche. Basically, he has a lot of money and no breeding. That he's basically just how would you put it? Just he wants to be cultured, but he just doesn't have a cultured bone in his body. This sort of haute couture, right? Not couture, but culture, right? A high culture, like operas and masked balls and very fancy food and really expensive fancy houses. Um, but he's just like he might just be a salesman who got really really lucky or was really really successful. He's not a culture vulture, so to speak. And he becomes that at the time that this was written, Moliere, which was the late 1600s, he becomes sort of a victim to the whoever it is that's teaching him culture, and they're pushing a lot of Turkish stuff on him, so he has to watch this Turkish dance, and he tries to imitate it, and obviously to comedic effect because he looks like a moron. And the better the actor who plays it, the funnier it is. But anyway, like this idea of cultural appropriation is that you basically you see in another culture something you like, whether it's an artistic style or if it's a food, then you're like, oh well, we're starting to use noodles now. And there's talk of like if you look at the Romans didn't have noodles. So somewhere along the line between Rome and Italy, noodles became a giant part of the culture. And there are a couple of things that kind of point in either to the Chinese or to the Arabs. I don't really know. But obviously, it's an importation of culture. And when you do trade with cultures like the Venetians and the Genoese, did culture with the Arabs. And Marco Polo was from Venice. He went out to China for about 10 years and brought back really interesting ideas and things from China. So this was the time of Kublai Khan. He came back with a lot of Chinese ideas. Some of them took on, some of them didn't, obviously. And, people just, I like this, I like that, I like this. And they're okay, we just cut out things we don't like and keep the things we do like. I mean, that's basically, a lot of people do that with religion, or people do that with art or music. And the thing is that if you really want to go down this is about cultural appropriation, or accusations of cultural appropriation really stem to an authenticity that is very to use a very overused term, uh, toxic in the sense of it becomes a purity thing rather than a respect thing. It's that I'm pure. You, since you do not come from China, you cannot use anything of ours. Well, if you want to play this game, you want to follow down that road, then basically the rest of the non-English speaking world can't participate in uh, English American, Canadian, whatever, Anglo world, art, culture, business, movies, etc. You can't do anything in English because it's our language. You can't have any influence in it. You have to use it precisely the way we say things here in America or in Britain. You're going to have no say in this. You're not allowed to use our language. You can't use our court systems. Like you can't mimic our court systems like they do in about half of Africa. They try, at least try to mimic our court systems. The reason why they don't really work is because they're so underfunded and they don't have legal sort of infrastructure. They don't have lawyers to understand these things because they haven't gone to school. Most of these people, have trouble going to law school because they're too busy, trying not to die from diseases or wars or whatever. You really have to understand that this is the reason why the West is so successful is because we've been relatively at peace. Anyway, that's a little side note, but so it becomes a purity thing. So if you say you're not allowed to cook Mexican food, well, who said so? Are the cultural police going to come out and stop me? No, these have to be socially enforced by, let's call them totalitarians. They basically want to control every aspect of your life in a cultural sense. And you just have to say, no, screw you. I'm going to do what I damn well please. If you don't like it, call the police and see this time how long they laugh in your face. That's the way it is. They can only do things through cultural bullying. So accusations of this sort, they claim that they want authenticity, but they don't. They just want to control you. If you think about it, authentic, the thing is like, what is authentic about me cooking Mexican food or French food or Italian food? I have no connection to them. Genetic wise, I did live in France for a little bit, so I do feel like I have a bit of a connection there. I have no genetic or cultural tie to these countries other than affinity for their food and for their music and for their like Italy, France, it's Mexico. They've got great music, great food, great architecture, very unique to themselves. I think they are to be respected and even if copied. I do think so. We in the West here, in America, we copy French stuff all the time. What are you talking about? We use just basically inappropriately using French terms that just don't really work in French. And the thing is that you think about these things, like if you go to Washington D.C., a lot of the early government buildings are either come from Rome or they come from France. And you think like we're copying their things, maybe we're tweaking them a little bit to our styles or to the constraints that we have in building the building. But it's a sign of affection that we have such respect for Rome that we built our capital in a Roman style. The thing I often think that many of the best things in life are when two seemingly totally unrelated things come crashing together. And that's true with music, with art, food, architecture, human life, right? If we all had kids with our sisters, we wouldn't be getting to the moon. We need different differences in order to continue human life. So I think this obsession over authenticity can be really, really bad. It's a good personal quality to have, but if you're talking about things at a sort of abstract, high level, it's stupid. It's a silly conversation to have. And it seems to be done by people who themselves are not very productive people. Artists, cooks, social or, cultural critics who do nothing but complain about just anything. They are useless sacks of flesh. And they don't actually do anything other than point a finger at society. Sometimes you need that. You need that social gadfly, but most of the time these people are just whiny little brats. Um, and the thing is that they look at these things as not a new take on something, revitalizing something, putting new blood into things, experimenting. They see them as sort of theft rather than just an attempt, And the thing is, there's also this claim of fetishization, which is not a word that should be a word because fetish is usually like uh, almost like an idol. Like you would see them with like African or Asian, like really remote tribes fetish size something. They put their god into a little block of wood and they carve it, and it looks like a little sort of demon. Um, and they pray to it. But in the sense of like this claim of fetishization is that we look and we romanticize something, we only see positive things in something, or we see them as exotic, wonderful things. I think it's a bit silly because when you, as a, especially when it's a foreign culture. So, I'll give you an example. I really enjoy a lot of the classic styles, particularly Egyptian, like ancient Egyptian aesthetic is just amazing. It's beautiful. I know it looks a little funny, and we can laugh at the hieroglyphs, with like feathers and eyeballs and things like that. But it's everything that I've ever seen from them just looks amazing. And you look at the Roman stuff. I love Roman architecture and Greek art. I love them. If you go to the British Museum in London, you'll just see the most amazing art from all over the world. And yeah, some of the stuff stands out a little bit more to me, particularly Egypt and Rome and Greece, which Greece, basically Rome was trying to copy Greece. Um, but I think it's wonderful to look at that and just have that and to be appreciative of it. Even though life back then it probably sucked a lot because you didn't even have running water or toilets, let alone medicine. But it just to be in awe of something and really to want to have pictures. We have pictures in the house of Roman style stuff and Egyptian stuff that I got through the years. And it's just, I love it. I love just stopping and looking at it and admiring it. And I'm not going to stop that because, like it's a style of art that I love. And it's really rare because I'm not a big art buff, but I just look at that and it's something that makes me happy. And I don't see a problem with that because I don't have one drop of Egyptian blood, one drop of Roman or Greek blood in me, but I can't be an admirer for that of that style. It's just totally ridiculous. I won't stop because I love it, and I think that is the real authenticity. There is, I love this. Screw you if you don't like it. Just go in a hole and die somewhere. On that positive note, I'll see you soon. Bye.